Pareidolia is the ability of the human mind to see things that aren't really there. Humans are inherently pattern-seeking creatures, and when we want to see things, invariably we do, and nowhere is this more true than in today's video. Sadly, they can't really understand the truth of the matter because, to them, the truth doesn't matter. It usually comes down to their religious wishful thinking. And that's really nothing to be proud of. We're going to watch a short TikTok on a channel called LeRon West. It was sent in by a friend of the channel and constant source of bemusement, Samuel Shick, so he really ought to get a big thank you if you see him down in the comments. While I'm thinking about it, I was sort of considering giving people who send in suggested videos early access to the videos that they send in. Let me know down in the comments if you think that's a good idea, or if, for people who do send things in, they'd like to go and look early. Anyway, this is a tale of a photograph and a room of gullible, stupid theists who exchange good money for bad fiction. And I'm sure that won't be a surprise to anyone. So let's take a look.
When I was preaching in Australia, a lady was in the congregation who had been traveling by air from Australia to New Zealand over the Tasman Sea.
Oh, good. I can see where this one is going already. This is probably going to be one of the videos where something weird happens and they pretend that only God could have done it. This is insanely common among the religious. In fact, pretty much every miracle claim ever is just this. Well, I don't get it, therefore God. Except that's not how any of this works. This is what happens when you have a poor imagination and zero interest in how things are actually going on. So let's see what's happening on this magical airplane trip. I'm willing to bet it's not going to be impressive.
And halfway across to New Zealand, they had run into a violent electrical storm, and the clouds seemed to be on fire with lightning all around the aircraft. And she was quite frightened.
And a lot of people, when they're frightened, they will do just about anything to allay that fear. A lot of people are culturally indoctrinated into talking to themselves and pretending it's a god. And that happens a lot too. That doesn't mean that there's actually a god out there, only that thinking of some magical father figure in the sky might make you feel momentarily better. It doesn't actually mean anything though. So let's continue.
And the plane was being tossed around with the wind and the air pockets. And the passengers panicked and they were screaming. They were holding on to each other. I think they all thought the plane would break up and they would all die.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that in cases where airplanes do break up and everyone dies, do you think that people weren't praying then? Because that's a question that always comes up when I hear things like this. The 9/11 hijackings. You don't think there were people in the back that were praying their brains out? Did it help? Did it make any of them survive? No, of course not. So saying, well, everyone was scared, that doesn't mean anything. Saying everyone was asking God to save them, that doesn't mean anything. Everyone was just looking for a sign. Yeah, fasten your seatbelts and shut the hell up. Let the pilots do their job. It's not a guarantee, but it's about the best that you're going to demonstrably get.
And the lady noticed that the lady sitting next to her against the window was praying. Well, anybody would pray in that situation.
Not anyone with the brain, because that doesn't actually mean anything. You'd better hope that the pilots aren't praying, otherwise you're doomed. They ought to be doing their jobs and flying the plane. So we've got this one lady who's back there talking to herself, and everyone else is just running around the cabin or whatever. I mean, I'm thinking of that scene in Airplane. Don't mind me. So, are we supposed to believe that because this one crazy loon was praying, that somehow that's going to save the plane? Yeah, I'd like to see how you back that one up, honestly. Somehow, I don't even think they're going to bother to try.
But she said to her, "Excuse me, but are you a Christian?" The lady said yes. And so they said, "Well, let's pray together." And together they said, "Lord, you stilled the storm 2,000 years ago. Please do it again."
Yeah, I bet that didn't work. That is not how weather operates. So, is the weather just going to go whoosh and be gone? No, I'm willing to bet it won't be. I mean, you can fly out of a storm cell and it can look like that, but an entire weather system just doesn't vanish out of the blue. And I see this kind of thing a lot, and it all comes off as, well, it just seems to me, which, again, doesn't mean anything. Your interpretations don't change reality. Your faith doesn't make demonstrable fact. And I'm hoping that somewhere we're going to get to a point, but this is just a religious story, and I think we all know by now that's not always the case. They just really want people to believe. But anyway, keep your fingers crossed. It doesn't do anything, but it sure the hell can't hurt.
But please still the storm inside the plane as well as outside. And within 2 minutes, everybody in the plane was at peace.
And I'm sure that the flight attendants had absolutely nothing to do with it at all. You know, sit your asses down or we'll tie you down. Because these people are always looking for magical explanations when perfectly natural ones will do. Granted, we just have this guy's word for it, and we know that the religious tend to make stuff up because it makes people feel good. The religious are really good at that, as we all well know. We've caught them doing it many, many, many times before. So take absolutely everything that's being said with a grain of salt, or a couple of handfuls, whatever is easiest, and don't take any of the conclusions seriously. Remember, they're not trying to relate any of this accurately. They're not providing evidence that it ever happened. They're just trying to comfort the already religiously gullible and get their money. Don't be those people.
And it stopped screaming and was sitting quietly. But the storm continued outside, and she had a camera, so she leant over across the new friend, and she held the camera at arm's length against the window and pressed the trigger, hoping that she might get a picture of this extraordinary sight of the lightning apparently setting the whole sky on fire.
Ooh, let me guess. There was a monster on the wing of the plane. Or maybe there was just a gigantic shark jumping at the plane. I mean, I guess it could have been Godzilla. After all, he's got an affinity for taking down airplanes too. I mean, don't keep us in suspense. Tell us what she supposedly saw.
Well, she took the film to be developed in New Zealand after she'd landed safely, because as soon as she took the photograph, the storm outside stopped as well.
Yeah, sure it did. I bet there's no actual oceanographic or weather data to back any of that up, is there? It just makes the story sound better to the already religiously gullible audience. So let me make a prediction right here. It's going to be something that, if you squint real hard with the right religious mindset, you might be able to interpret the picture as something significant. And that assumes that we're going to get a picture at all, which, honestly, who the hell knows? So that's what I think is going to happen. Let's see if I'm right.
And they came into clear air and landed safely in New Zealand. She took the film to be developed, and the shop rang her up later and said, "Your photographs are ready, but will you please come and pick them up yourself?"
Who the hell else is going to do it? Please send your dog to pick up your photos. That's kind of stupid. Now, I know that the carefully crafted story, that probably never happened, at least not as described. All of this depends on foreshadowing the ending reveal. But once you know what to look for in these fanciful tales, it's not that hard to identify. "Oh, look at this picture. It can't have a rational explanation." Yeah, but I'm sure it does.
"I want to talk to you." And when she went to collect the photograph, she said, "Why do you want to talk to me?" And the photographer said, "Where did you get this photograph?" And she told how she'd held the camera against the window of the plane and how the storm had stopped as soon as she took the photograph.
None of which is remotely verified, since it's highly doubtful that any of this ever happened in the first place. Now, you can call me an extreme skeptic if you want, but given the poor track record of the religious, I figure I've got a really good reason to be skeptical. These things are never presented with any evidence to back them up. The person making the claims never comes up on stage and vouches that everything happened exactly as described. And even if they did, that wouldn't mean anything. Personal testimony is insanely fallible. I don't care what you say happened. I want verifiable evidence that it did. So this story just isn't going anywhere worthwhile, but let's see where it ends up. I figure there just has to be a picture at the end. I'm going to be really disgusted if they don't have a big screen to just flash it on.
And the photographer and his family all became Christians that afternoon.
That is complete bullshit. I want you to trot them out there because I don't believe you. If you remember, and it's been quite a while now, but there was a guy in a video that we did who was making claims about just witnessing to some lady in a liquor store. And he said, well, she immediately became a Christian. Great. Where is she? This supposedly just happened. They were standing in the parking lot. So where is this lady? Let's hear it from her directly. Of course, I don't think that's going to happen, and I'll be happy to admit that I'm wrong if this guy trots somebody out on stage and she says, I was there and that's exactly what happened. But even that isn't going to prove anything because the religious often use paid shills who say things for a buck that never actually happened. That's why testimony doesn't mean anything. He's counting on the idiots in the pews just wanting to believe. And I'm not willing to do that.
It was originally a color photograph. I've only managed to get it on black and white in this transparency, but this was how the photograph turned out.
I hope you've got more than that, because that's just a fuzzy mess. What is that supposed to be? And how do you prove it? I don't know, maybe he's going to provide a close-up on the screen and we can take a better look, but what I'm seeing right now is completely meaningless. This is just religious pareidolia.
I don't think you'll be able to see the face. You will one day.
Welcome to Photoshop. I could do that in about 10 minutes in full color. Of course, now I kind of question the photo guy's instant conversion, because unless you have expectations about the image, something that only Christians should do, that shouldn't convince anybody. This kind of thing happens all the time, though. There have been lots of pictures of Jesus in the clouds that just don't stand up to any kind of critical scrutiny. In fact, the earliest one that I could find was this one, supposedly taken in 1951 by a pilot in a B-29 over Korea. The Daily Independent in Ashland, Kentucky, ran the photo and the issue sold out. They claimed they got it from a Mrs. G.E. Dobbins, who said she got it from her neighbor, who, in turn, got it from her daughter-in-law, who bought it for $1 from a woman who got it from an unnamed man. Sure, that sounds really reliable. The story spread far and wide, even winding up in Time magazine. The religious news service was printing the picture and selling it for $1 a copy to gullible idiots. The problem is, it was all fake. Air Force Staff Sergeant Roy C. Burnham revealed that a photo laboratory technician had taken the original picture in 1944 out of a B-17, and he had painted the picture of Jesus with the hopes he could just sell copies to airmen as souvenirs. Burnham said, I thought it was time people found out the truth. The thing has been carried too far. Some people are actually beginning to believe that stuff about the picture. This is exactly the same thing going on. just because you interpret something in a picture, even if it is a legitimate photo, which that doesn't mean this is, that doesn't mean it's there. There are tons of pictures of Jesus in the clouds, on toast, you name it. There's pictures, and people interpret whatever they want to see in it. But there's just as many pictures of horses and rabbits and other things. Just because you really like the idea of Jesus in the clouds, that doesn't mean that Jesus is there. This is just a con job. And I bet right after this video ends, the collection plate got passed around. Wonder why?
But that was what the camera saw. She didn't. A figure in perfect peace, in control of the situation.
If Jesus was really in control, then you shouldn't have a problem producing weather data from that day that showed that the storm just stopped. Magically. How much do you want to bet they can't produce that? How much do you want to bet they didn't even look? It isn't the point of the story, of course. They just want people to dig deep into their wallets and cough up cash while their emotions are still inflamed by this ridiculous story. This is why they don't talk to skeptics, because skeptics would point out all of the problems with these tall tales. We're not willing to take any of it on faith, and nobody else should either.
I have only once in my life had the sheer privilege of having a vision of Jesus. I saw him. I can't describe his face to this day. But just to know that he was there and he was real. But one day we shall see him and see his face, and we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is.
All of which is just silly faith-based nonsense. It's what you want to believe. But that doesn't make any of it true. That's really where we need to stop these people and demand that they back up their claims with some kind of objectively verifiable evidence. Of course, they won't be able to do it. They won't even try. Granted, that's why he's not in front of a skeptics convention, because he knows he's not going to get the same kind of response that he's looking for. He wants gullible idiots to give him money. A lot of money. And that's ultimately what religion is all about. Tell crap stories, get back plates full of money. It's just performance art for dumb people.
Well, John had that vision, but it was frightening, as I told you last night. He fell in a dead faint, and a well-known voice said, "Don't be afraid. I was dead, and now I am alive forevermore."
Wait a minute. Is he now telling a completely different story? It's kind of hard to keep up. What happened last night? You had a different audience full of suckers on the line? Yeah, that's not surprising. It's one indefensible, unsubstantiated nonsense story after another, and the morons in the pews keep coming back night after night after night to just get fleeced anew. I mean, really, isn't that what's going on here? The people who are looking for a reason to believe are here, over and over and over again, shoveling more money into the collection plate because they get their happy story quota. Welcome to religion. That's what's really going on.
You know of every other great world leader, every other founder of a religion, you have to say they were alive and they are now dead forevermore.
We can't even say that Jesus was ever alive, at least not in the form described in the Bible. It's all patent nonsense. However, we can look at all kinds of supposed messiahs that have come and gone, and lots of them supposedly came back from the dead too. That doesn't mean that any of them were real either. Some might have had human analogs, but mostly we're just talking about myths that had people making up stories about them as a way to fleece the gullible, just like what happened with Jesus. I don't buy into any of it, and honestly, neither should you.
Only of Jesus can you say he was dead and is alive forevermore.
Oh, sure, you can say that. You'd be insane, but you could say that. I can also say that invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies died and rose from the dead. Why? Because I just made it up. See, I said it, but that doesn't make it true. This is just an idiot on a stage telling tall tales because it makes him a bunch of money from the imbeciles in the audience who believe it for no good reason. That is faith, not fact. It is not a good reason to believe any of it.
Confucius is dead, Buddha is dead, Muhammad is dead, but Jesus is alive.
Says who? Well, I mean, sure, I know that you do, but how do you prove it? This is the problem with blind faith and wishful thinking. It's a story in a book of mythology. Other books of mythology tell other stories. You might not like those tall tales, but your enjoyment doesn't actually mean anything. Truth is truth is truth. Lies are lies are lies. This is just an idiot with a theological hard-on spewing Godspooge on everybody who will listen for a buck. It's really, really stupid, and luckily, nobody here in my audience at least is dumb, at least I hope not. It's why nobody ought to take any of this bullcrap seriously. I know I don't. How about you? Anyhow, thanks to Samuel Shick for this shit nugget. That's another one of those stories that just makes you roll your eyes and wonder what the hell is wrong with the people who actually believe it. The same thing goes for flat earthers and UFO nutballs and all the other people who sit there in rapt attention while people tell them imaginary stories meant to make them happy and open their wallets. I just sit here and wonder what the hell is wrong with these idiots. Sure, it might be momentarily entertaining and stroke your sadly immature egos, but you ought to be smarter than that. It's the same reason that people are sending their banking information to Nigerian princes, because they can't think further ahead than, I'm going to be rich. No, you won't. You're a sucker, and everyone in the audience listening to this crap, they are also suckers. They go home poorer for the experience because they've fallen for the con, and most of them just come back again and again and again once they fill their wallets up. This is terminal stupidity, and it happens in every single church in the world. You'd think they would have figured it out by now. Sadly, that hasn't happened for most.